Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on our very last little post chat for the sermon series, all in the explicit gospel.
I know.
Yeah. Ryan, you did a great job
Thanks,
kind of wrapping it up. Yeah, you're welcome. Wrapping it up and talking about just this new, not new existence. That was last week's. What was your title for this week?
Yeah, a new state of existence.
Kingdom Come.
Oh, Kingdom Come.
That was the title. That's right. But you said something really great at the end that I thought was good for the whole series.
Yeah.
You just mentioned just how kind of big and how dynamic the cross and the resurrection are. And I think the series showed it because we talked about so many different elements of humanity and who Christ is and who God is, and of existence for me and for you and for everyone and for all of creation. And we talked about so many big things. And the crazy thing is, when we're talking about all these big things, we're talking about how this one event changed them, reshaped them, reoriented them, offered a new hope to them, and that is the cross and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So it's just been very interesting just to kind of slow down, look at this one detail, this one event, and how it changed everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy to, and I'm going to be kind as I can, it's really easy to get caught up in just the Christian culture version of Christianity, like kind of more of like loosely talk about the highlights and talk about the cross, but not in the way that God really intended his children to really understand the work of the cross. So it's more of like, do you know Jesus will change your life and everything will be good, and then go to church. Like it's not even scratching the surface of the power of the cross and the resurrection and what that did for humanity. And so I think we do it when we teach. We always want to go back a little bit and remind people that what God intended is so much better than what we were getting. But Christ made a way and changed everything. Yeah. And it's that thing that sometimes you wonder, like, why doesn't someone really appreciate what Christ did? And even like when we talk about like their reverence for Christmas or this reverence for Easter, and just what a big deal it is, more than just good food and dressing up, that it was significant, the celebration of that. And so I think sometimes that can kind of get lost. And so I feel like this series, for a lot of people, even just like explain it themselves about, well, what did happen when Christ died, and why is it so important? Yeah,
and kind of learning to articulate like the details, because he wasn't just spinning his wheels. Like it was to bring actual change to humanity, to the world,
and it did. This is why I think there was even a discussion about the movement of faith. Is that, well, if it's not a movement of God, is going to burn out, essentially. I remember there's passages where some of the leaders were talking about that, wondering if they should shut down this Christianity thing. And well, so and so tried, but something happened.
Yeah, it was some Pharisees.
I think so.
Some Pharisees were saying like either, Pharisee. I think his name starts with a G. I can't remember his name.
Yeah,
he was
that
kind of
guy.
the predominant Pharisee of that region at the time, and he was the one who kind of said like, hey, if this is of God, there's no stopping it.
Gamaliel, we're close.
Yeah.
Paul studied under him.
Werewolves. What was
it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. It was something like that, something with a G. But yeah, he said, if this is of God, there's no stopping it.
Yes.
And if it's of man, it's only a matter of time until it fades out on its own anyways.
So. And just even that alone of like, if this is just a work of the flesh, then it'll fizzle out. Yeah. But look at where we're at now. Yeah. I mean, look at the impact of the gospel on the planet and in people's lives. And actually, even look at when somebody grabs a hold of the gospel, even just if you could treat them as a world themselves, how radically transformed that they are. Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, that's a great lead into our next point, because I would counter that with, for some people, yes. Yeah. For other people, they receive that same gospel and look no different. Yeah. Right? And that was your third point you talked about, was a new way. A new way of living. You talked about kind of adopting the culture of God's kingdom, and you're talking about kind of your move from Michigan to California to Texas, and just like letting some things go because they're not needed where you were going. Yeah. And that was a good example of adopting a new culture. But I think some people take on this gospel without adopting any of its surrounding culture.
Sure.
And they look just the same. You know?
Yeah.
I always love using the illustration
Yeah.
of like, if you move to, let's say, Japan, but you never learned Japanese, and you never learned how to eat with chopsticks, and you
Yeah.
didn't like sushi, like, are you becoming Japanese?
Yeah.
No, you're
Yeah.
not. You're still eating Pop-Tarts and
You're
Twinkies.
you're
and
hanging
hot
on to
dogs.
your
You're,
way.
you're
Yeah.
American.
When it's interesting because when you say that about even the move, when I moved to Texas, you were there. You understand
I
that.
was there for like 36 hours. I saw
Okay.
the culture.
So I went from trying to learn from you guys how to surf and how to longboarding and kite surfing to 6 months later, I'm learning how to shoot cattle into cattle chute to castrate cattle. Like I never thought I would ever be doing that.
Yeah.
But it was just a part of the people I was around, the culture.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you're right. It's more of like they don't want to let go of this old ways, if you will, and to really go into the fullness. And they actually won't ever see the fruit of that either. So when you're out constantly hanging on to, well, I just don't want to I just want to dip my toe in. I don't want to let go of these things. But you miss out on the fruit of what God's inviting you into as well.
Yeah, because the cross and the resurrection are meant to fully transform you. And the work of the Spirit in your life, sanctification, we're talking about that a bit in the adult ed, it's meant to fully transform you.
Sure.
And if you're still keeping a foot back on your old life, you're missing that.
Yeah, and you can't be perfect. You are going to, I would say, like, this is what we talk about as spiritual maturity. And we don't mean that in a levels way. We mean that as someone who is immersing themselves in kingdom culture more and more.
Yeah, you use the word cravings. I think that's the right word. You know, it is I'm not talking about are you going to make mistakes, but what are you pursuing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I remember when I was about to propose to Sarah, I was in youth ministry in San Diego, and I remember looking at the couples that I was around. It was my junior hire's parents, but seeing the marriages that were just super, super close and healthy.
Yeah.
And I took some of them out to coffee and just asked, like, what did you do? You know, because I was about to enter into that stage of life, and I just wanted to become that as much as I could. So I was trying to learn from health, from healthy examples. But I could have walked into marriage and still tried to maintain my bachelor lifestyle, right? Like many people have. Right?
Sure.
But yeah, I think cravings is it. It's not a matter of did you mess up or not. It's a matter of what are you pursuing?
Yeah.
And are you honestly trying to pursue this new way in the kingdom of God?
Yeah, and maybe this is a weird analogy, but it is like, you hear about that typical guy or girl who, all of a sudden they're pregnant, but they're not with that person, but they're going to have a child, and and I've heard a few stories of guys who wild, wanted to live their own life, but something bigger came along, and I know this is a weird analogy, but something bigger came along, and it's like they had to change because they saw that I have a kid, I need to be responsible, and all of a sudden they flip into a completely different person, reading about how to be a dad, going to learn how to change a diaper and all these other things. And you see a rapid advancement in the change because they saw this is something's bigger than me. Now some guys don't. They just aren't mature and aren't great dads. But some people it does, and they just go, there's something more important. There's something bigger than all of my wants and needs and desires that I crave now. And then all of a sudden, 5 years down the road, they go, oh, I could never live like I used to live. I would never even want that. This is what I live for.
I think it's a perfect illustration.
Oh, thanks, Jack.
No, because I just think I always used to say to some of the junior hires that, like, if what we read in Scripture is true, if the gospel that we've presented over the past 8 weeks, if this is true, this is real, it changes everything.
It does.
And you can't just accept this little truth without changing anything about you.
Yeah.
if you're affirming that there is a God of the universe and this God intervened into creation to redeem it, defeating death as a model and as a gateway for the rest of us to do the same, like that changes everything.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't just change what you do Sundays at 9:30 or whatever. Like that changes who you are.
It does.
And that's what I think the series just did a great job of doing, is just looking at what has been changed,
Yeah.
what has been conquered because of the gospel.
Yeah. And I think our goal with this series has been, man, we want to be a church or a people that really understand the gospel, its fundamentals, and its impact. Because I think when we don't, and we just kind of see it from a distance, or it's vaguely, like we have a vague, I'd say, craving for understanding it more, knowing more about it, we don't want to share it.
Yeah.
And we don't value it the way it's meant to be valued. Like you had just said, well, why would we share it? If it's to us, it's not that meaningful.
Yeah.
Then we won't want to give that away. And so I think that the more we see the importance of it, and the impact or the depth and scope of it, the more we want to share that.
Absolutely.
And we take a lot of responsibility when we do understand the gospel more and more to go and share as much as possible.
Absolutely. I hope that for everyone, this series has been a good time of learning to articulate the gospel for yourself and really process and break down, as Ryan has touched on different aspects of what the gospel has done theologically and for each one of us. This whole series is still available on YouTube, will always be. So, feel free, if you want to, you can go back and you can review some of these and just really reflect, because ultimately the greatest witness to the gospel is your own, which only you can know when you really process the truth that we talked about over the past 8 weeks. So thanks so much for joining us. And look forward to hopefully seeing you all at the park in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, guys.
And,
Have a great week.